Welcome everyone to episode number 4 of Sellics Thursday Live. Sellics Thursday Live is a weekly show that we do every Thursday in which we invite Amazon industry experts to discuss strategies and tactics on how to successfully sell on Amazon. Last week, we talked a lot about how specifically vendors have been affected by the Corona crisis and what they can do if they don't get enough POs or they're getting too many POs. So if you want to listen to last week's episode, feel free to go on YouTube on our Sellics YouTube channel, or we also have a podcast, so you can find us on the podcast platforms. Today, we want to focus specifically on Amazon advertising during the Corona times. Obviously, advertising on Amazon has been a huge topic in the past 2 years or so, and I think there's no brand that I know, at least, that is not doing any sorts of Amazon advertising today. Now, the question obviously is what happens in those situations like now, where you have a big external shock. So should you continue to advertise or not? And if so if you continue to advertise, how? Is there any change in strategy or in tactic that is required? So those are the questions that we want to discuss today. My guest today is Stefan. Stefan is the advertising director at Bobstead Marketing. Bobstead Marketing is an Amazon, not just advertising agency, but obviously they also do a lot of advertising, but more broadly an Amazon agency based out of New York. So Stefan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today. Do you want to give us a little bit more context about you, what you do at Bobstead, and maybe also Bobstead?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. A little bit about myself. As you pointed out, my name is Stefan. I am the advertising director at Bobstead Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency that works with Amazon sellers and vendors. We've been on the market for about 5 years now. I specifically oversee the advertising efforts. We have both vendors and sellers and some people doing DSP with us. So I am ready to talk advertising with you guys today.
So to get started, we did some research and we looked into the data. So let me share my screen here for a minute. So we did some research as how advertising has been affected so far on Amazon. And so the first, maybe even before that, the first thing we did is when Corona really started, let's say, or really took off, and the countries were sent in lockdown, we sent a survey around to our customer base. That was around mid-March. And one of the questions we asked them is, how do you plan to change your advertising budget, right? And so as you can see here in this chart, many of our customers, so about 40% of our customers were planning to either decrease it or decrease it by a lot, right? 50% of customers, 40% of customers were expecting to keep it around the same level. And only 10% of the customers were expecting to increase their advertising spend during the Corona situation. So that was essentially right at the beginning when Corona really hit. Those were the expectations. So many of our customers were expecting to decrease their ad spend as a result of the Corona situation. Now, when you look at what actually happened, and this is now based on the data, you can see that ad spend is actually up by 30 to 40% compared to January. So if you compare, and this is only for the US market, but ad spend has been increasing quite significantly, still also towards the end of March. So ad spend is actually up by quite a bit. And so and this is actually true not just for the US. This is also true if we look at all the different countries. So if we look at year-over-year growth, we can see that across all countries except for Canada, but across all countries, year-over-year growth in March has been a lot more than it was in February. So clearly, this is not just a seasonal increase. This is an exceptional increase that we've noticed, at least amongst the Sellics customer base. And so the question for us is like, why did this happen? Why were customers planning to reduce their ad spend? But now when you really look at the stats, actually ad spend was going up. And so I think the answer to this or you can find the answer to this on the next slide, because if you look at the performance, what you'll see here on this slide is that the performance has actually been very strong throughout the course of March. So first of all, revenue. So the advertising revenue has been up drastically from the beginning of the year. So it's been up by over 50% in some weeks. So there's a lot more revenue that's being made through advertising. Clicks are up by about 20 to 30%. The CPCs are down. And so naturally, obviously, also the ACOS has been down or lower than it has been historically. So you have a lot more volume, a lot more clicks, a lot more revenue, but the clicks, the CPCs are decreasing. And so the ACOS is dropping as well. Obviously, this is on an aggregated level, right? But I think that this is still a somewhat surprising development. I do think that what was expected was to be that CPCs would decrease because there would be less competition maybe and some sellers or vendors dropping out. But this combination of a drop in CPC and yet an increase in revenue has actually been quite surprising. And the end result is that advertising is actually more profitable now than it used to be in January and in February. Now, you can also see here that ad revenue has peaked on the week of the 16th of March. So that was the week right before Amazon extended the shipping times and also restricted the inbound shipments. So that was right before. So things have normalized a bit more since then. But overall, we still are on a very high level. So I think if there weren't the issues with the inbound shipping and also shipping to the customer, I think that we would probably still be on the same level as we had in the week of the 16th, which I think would have been exceptionally high. And now we're still on a higher level, but not exactly the same as we'd seen 2-3 weeks ago. So that's what we see when we look at the data. So on the one side, the sentiment going into this crisis was a lot like, hey, we plan to reduce our budget. Really what happened is ad spend overall went up. And this was combined with a drop in CPC and an increase in revenue, so that overall ACOS has been down. So this is what we've been seeing. And now obviously the question is, well, giving all of this, right? What's the situation like? So does it make sense to spend money on Amazon? Looking at this, it seems like yes. On the other side, there are a lot of people that were planning to reduce ad spend. So Stefan, what's your opinion on this? Like, what should be the right strategy now? Should people stop advertising or should they continue to advertise?
I would say my advice is definitely in line with what you guys saw in the survey. The reason why we had answers for all buckets is probably just because this is so much dependent on each individual account. I do know and realize that a lot of clients we've had, a lot of accounts have different strategies. So I do understand that it can be different from brand to brand. I do think there are a few questions that one needs to ask before making the decision. One main question that's quite obvious is, would you have the inventory levels to support the increased sales we expect until the next shipment comes? A lot of questions that follow that would be your fulfillment method. A lot of sellers use this opportunity to go between FBA and FBM. So if you do have the ability to fulfill your own orders, you might be considering increasing advertising or just maintaining the levels there. Has your product been affected by the delayed shipping rates? So I do understand that a lot of sellers will have to make that decision for themselves. It can't just be going blindly into increasing the advertising budget. But as you pointed out, the results are actually very encouraging. The results we're seeing in the past few weeks are definitely towards increase in sales. So basically, if I'm to summarize my answer, my only advice to Amazon brands and Amazon sellers would be, don't make a panic reaction where you would stop advertising altogether. That's the one thing I'm looking to avoid. I do think there's a lot of opportunity that came with the uncertainty. A lot of well-known brands actually ran out of stock overnight. So you do have that opportunity to get on their product listings, grab that share of voice you're hoping to get when competing with them. And I do think that whoever was planning on having more inventory or being more comfortable having more FBA inventory should definitely try to take advantage of this opportunity and increase advertising budgets now. As you pointed out, sales are coming. We have quarantined customers sitting at home. I have been analyzing the data. Believe it or not, it's not just toilet paper that sells, and people are looking for a variety of categories to buy from and use these products as they're getting used to their new lifestyle. So please don't make an uninformed decision to stop advertising. And anything beyond that, I think, is dependent on the brand strategy in general.
For those people that continue to run ads, and as we've seen in the numbers that I showed before, it looks like a big majority of customers are still continuing to spend quite heavily on advertising. What would be the tactics and the strategies to use? I mean, do you have a couple of tactics and strategies that are specific for a situation right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple of them I have in mind getting ready for us talking today. I think one I would like to start off with, because it's very basic and I think anybody can react to it really quickly, is just focus on sponsored product campaigns. The main reason I'm recommending this is we talked a lot about inventory. These campaign types, sponsored product as a campaign type, is dependent on you owning the buy box. So if you want to make sure that you're only advertising what's in inventory, what you have stock for, and something that you will get the attributed sales to is sponsored products. This, of course, again, depends on the strategy. If you're not looking to get some more visibility, some brand awareness out there. Right. But for most sellers who are mostly ROI focused right now, is just dedicate the budget you have for sponsored brands and sponsored display towards sponsored products. Mm-hmm. And this is definitely an approach we've taken for a client of ours. Basically, we just had a 50% decrease in budget comparing March to April. And this actually gave us a good opportunity to just shift the budget towards sponsored products only. We have built out some portfolios which are dedicated per product line. So we're not only able to just make the distinction and make the budget shorter, but we actually can dedicate specific budget towards specific product lines. So so far, I mean, we're halfway into the month. I was looking at the mid-date budget utilization yesterday. It does appear to be working for both just control what you spend, and it does provide some great ROI as well. Sponsored products are still the fundamental aspect of Amazon.
That's what I wanted to ask is, like, if most customers, I would argue, would see probably the best ROI on sponsored products compared to sponsored brands and sponsored display. But if that's not the case, so assuming that sponsored display and sponsored brands is actually providing a high ROI, would you still recommend to go with sponsored products just because you have this security that you will not advertise a product that you don't own the buy box for? Or would you say, well, go wherever the ROI is best?
Well, I would say go where the ROI is best. Just a couple of clarifications there. If you have products where you're the only seller, you're brand registered, you don't have a lot of squatters, that's a definite argument towards sponsored brands as well. Right. One thing to be mindful of is if you have a product where you have a bunch of unauthorized or authorized sellers, that buy box is rotating, Amazon is rotating it every 15 minutes. This would be a consideration towards, maybe I'm willing to sacrifice a couple of ACoS percentage points, but I would rather go with what I own and promote my inventory.
All right, understood. And so the any other tactics, any other strategies?
Yep. One interesting one we had a lot of fun working with and a lot of success with, and I'm not sure if it's still relevant, but it is for at least some US sellers, is when Amazon made the announcement about the delayed shipping dates. What we actually saw, and connecting this to a previous point I had, is we didn't see sellers having their entire product line or their entire inventory being affected. Even when we would have one parent ASIN, we would see this was really, really interesting to observe, but we would see a child variation that still has the 2-day shipping and another child variation that says it's going to get delivered by end of April.
Yeah.
And one strategy we implemented here is whenever we had a bunch of products which had the 2-day shipping dates available, we would run ASIN targeting campaign towards the products that were affected. If conversion rates are to be affected by customers just choosing to navigate away because they're not patient enough to wait for the delivery, you still have the option to promote your products which do have that ability there and just focus the sales towards them. So I do think this will get resolved ultimately in matter of weeks. But if you still have that US inventory being affected there, it might be a strategy that you might implement as soon as possible.
Jim was asking, how do you target a specific category to take advantage of a new trend? So how do you do that from a technical point of view?
So basically, these are available within either the very old product display campaigns that are still available with some AMS accounts, or you're able to create a category targeting campaign within sponsored products. Basically, you now have the ability to target keywords, categories, or even individual ASINs within sponsored products. You can refine that to go after brands. You can exclude brands, but basically, sponsored products should give you enough targeting options to go after what you have in mind.
So it's a sponsored product campaign that uses ASIN targeting, and within the ASIN targeting, you choose a category essentially, right? A product category to go after, right? So you suggest to go after a product category, not specifically after a set of ASINs. You just go after the entire category, right?
Well, it depends on the strategy. The strategy we were looking towards when you would defend your own listing, you would actually want to go after specific ASINs and those ASINs for yourself. I think they're a bit different. When we were talking about strategies, we were talking about these remotely related strategies. Yeah. But if you have something specific in mind, you want to go defend your listings or you want to go tackle that competitor, you might want to go to an ASIN level.
Right. Okay, then we have another question. What do you recommend to a seller in a travel niche who has seen a drop in demand? People are simply not buying, increase or decrease ad spend. So probably selling some travel accessories. Obviously, travel right now is just highly impacted. What would you recommend? Continue to advertise or not?
That is a good question. I'm just trying to think as I hear it. Unless there's a way to pivot what the what the products can be used for, just play with the messaging, make some interventions towards how these products can be used for either staying at home or just those short trips. If you're basically, we have to be honest, if these products are strictly related to longer term travel, it might be a good idea to dial back down significantly just because the demand won't be there. I'm sure there's ways. I think this is a period where we all need to make adjustments. And I do think there's possibly a way to adjust about at least how some products are being sold. But at the very least, I think this is a period where the advertising investment will be lowered during these in this category specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I look at it is probably it depends on, because so there are two options here, right? So the first option is that demand drops overall and people are not searching for it and not even clicking around, right? So then naturally your ad spend will lower because people are there's less volume and less traffic going after your products, right? So if this happened, then implicitly also your advertising spend is going down. The thing that I would look for is specifically also the conversion rate. So do you see a drastic change in conversion rate? Because the situation I guess you want to avoid is you continue to spend heavily and you get a ton of clicks, but no one is checking out and no one is buying. That's probably the situation that you want to avoid. So probably depending on how this impacts really your conversion rate, this is probably going to be a good indicator whether it makes sense to adjust your budgets, right? I think, look, there's a reality for some products. Some products are just not needed and not bought right now, right? That's just kind of the reality that is. If you're in the event space, I mean, it's just very hard to sell any event related products right now. So then there's not too much point in advertising then. Huh?
One thing that just came to mind as you were talking about conversion rates is maybe some of these products can be seen as potential gifts, maybe for the future. I think just playing with the messaging and trying to position those products as suitable for gifts for a loved one or somebody who is just eager to get these restrictions lifted and starts traveling. That might be an approach one might take.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Stefan, for sharing all of this. That was great. A ton of insights and very tactical tips, right? So I hope that you all got a ton out of this. If you have any further questions around Corona, feel free to check out our Sellics.com website. We have a dedicated landing page where we summarize all the information. And now, very specifically, I also wanted to take the time to announce a big launch that we have coming very soon at Sellics. It's one of the biggest launches that we've had in a very long time. It is focused around advertising. And so I cannot share too many details at this point, but it's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, right? And so if you guys want to be up to date about what's coming, there's a website or a link. I just posted it in the chat, sellics.com/new-release.com. No, not .com, sellics.com/new-release. That's essentially the website. And so you can go there, you can find some information and sign up, and then you'll be the first to hear from us when we release this new thing. So thank you very much for joining us again, Stefan. Any closing remarks from your side?
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.